Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Malugod namin kayong inaanyayahan upang sama-sama nating ipagdiwang ang pandaigdigang araw ng AIDS or World AIDS Day 2020. Ang araw na ito ang siyang nagpapaalala sa atin ng mga kapatid nating namayapa dulot ng komplikasyon ng acquired immune deficiency syndrome at sa mga patuloy pa rin na ikipaglaban sa HIV infection sa buong mundo. Ito rin ay pagkakataon upang ipagdiwang ang ating matagumpay na mga programa upang mapigilan ang pagdami ng impeksyon na hatid ng epidemyang HIV or Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Ito ay sa pamamagitan ng paggawa ng konkretong mga hakbang at polisiya na nagpapatibay sa implementasyon ng mga programang naglalayong mapangalagaan ang kalusugan at mabigyan ng pantay na karapatan ang mga PHIV or people living with HIV at maipagtanggol sila laban sa stigma at diskriminasyon. Sa kasalukuyan, merong naitala ang Epidemiology Bureau na 29 to 30% ng HIV infection na mula 15 hanggang 24 na edad. Pabata ng pabata ang datos na ito, at ito ay humihingi ng agarang aksyon upang mapigilan ang pagkalat ng sakit na ito. Ang tema ng ating pagdiriwang ngayong taon ay pinamagatang Global Solidarity, Shared Responsibility. Sa panahon ng pandemya ng COVID-19, ang lokal na pamahalaan ng Taguig ay kaisa ng mga pribado at pampublikong sektor na patuloy na nangangampanya para sa mahalagang advokasiyang ito. At sa palatuntunang ito, binibigyan din ng kabataan ng kanilang aktibong pakikilahok upang makatulong sa paghahati ng tamang impormasyon patungkol sa HIV at AIDS awareness. Ang bawat isa sa atin ay merong responsibilidad sa ating kapwa-tao. Tayo ay makaisa laban sa HIV at AIDS. This program is brought to you by Taguig Social Hygiene Clinic and Drop-In Center, Taguig City Health Office, Local Government of Taguig, in cooperation with the Department of Health and Department of Education.
Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Heidi Lorenzo, ang host sa selebrasyon ng World AIDS Day. Bago po tayo magsimula sa programang ito, nais ko lamang batiin ang mga mahalagang leader ng ating syudad sa pangunguna ng ating butihing Mayor Lino Cayetano, District 1 Taguig Pateros Representative Kuya Alan Peter Cayetano, District 2 Taguig Representative Congresswoman Ate Lani Cayetano, and of course, Senator Pia Cayetano, ang ating Vice Mayor Ading Cruz at kasama ang ating mga masisipag na konsehal sa lungsod ng Taguig, Councilor for Health, Konsehal Pami Zamora, Sangguniang Kabataan Chairman, Konsehal Beng Maximo, and of course, our City Health Officer, Dr. Norena R. Osano. Our HIV and AIDS Program Medical Coordinator, Dr. Diwata Ariola. Kada taon ay ipagdiriwang natin ang selebrasyon ng World AIDS Day. At sa kadahilan ng may pandemya, ay minarapat natin na sumusunod sa panuntunan ng Interagency Task Force na maiwasan ang malakihang pagtitipon. Ngunit, hindi ito nangangahulugan na ititigil natin ang advokasiyang meron tayo sa HIV and AIDS awareness. Maraming salamat at merong social media platforms sa tulad nito na malaking tulong upang mas maihatid natin ang programang pangkalusugan sa mga tahanan ng mga sumusuporta at nanonood nito. Ang theme or tema ng ating pagdiriwang ay Global Solidarity Shared Responsibility na nangangahulugan ang bawat isa sa atin ay may responsibilidad sa pakikisa laban sa HIV and AIDS. Mga kaibigan, paunlakan natin ang ating Taguig City Health Officer na si Dr. Norena R. Osano upang magbigay ng kanyang pambungad na pananalita.
Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Bago pong lahat, payagan niyo po ako batiin yung ating Councilor for Health, Honorable Amparo Zamora, for our Congressman, for District 1, Honorable Alan Peter Cayetano, for our Congresswoman, District 2, Honorable Maria Laarni Cayetano, for our Senator Pia Cayetano, at mismo ama ng ating lungsod, Mayor Lino Cayetano, for the Social Hygiene Clinic, headed by our Medical Coordinator, Dr. 𝙂𝙡 Ariola, and the peer educators. Good morning, everyone. Ngayong araw ay ating siniselebra ang World AIDS Day 2020.
Maraming salamat, Doc Osano, sa pagkakataong ito at nais pong ibigay itong pagkakataon na masaksihan po natin ang mensahe mula sa ama ng lungsod ng Taguig, no other than Mayor Lino Cayetano.
Ati ngayong World AIDS Day, sa ating City Health Office, sa ating Social Hygiene Clinic team, sa ating mga kaibigan, sa ating mga partners, ang Pilipinas Shell Foundation, Dr. Stella Flores, ang UNAIDS represented by Dr. 𝙂𝙡𝙤𝙖𝙡, AIDS Society of the Philippines, the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the City Health Office na pinangungunahan ni Dr. Osano, our Social Hygiene Clinic na pinangungunahan ni Dr. Diwata Ariola, Project Red Ribbon, the Red Whistle, people living with HIV, people affected by HIV, mga minamahal kong kababayang Taguigenyo. The City of Taguig affirms its commitment towards global solidarity and shared responsibility. The City of Taguig acknowledges na itong mga huling taon, ang Pilipinas ay isa sa pinakamataas ang porsyento ng dumadaming kaso ng HIV. Malaking porsyento, mahigit 30% ng mga kasong yan ay nandito mismo sa NCR. Malaking porsyento, mahigit 80% ay nasa edad 15 years old pataas. The youth sector is gravely affected. And the City of Taguig, with the help of its partners, also commits na hindi ho natin bibitawan, hindi ho natin titigilan. We will be strong partners and we will be strong advocates of compassionately helping and being able to advise, help, treat, cure. At isa ho sa mga malaking hakbang ho natin dyan ay yung pagtatayo natin ng sarili nating molecular laboratory. I've talked to our team and by next year, we will be able to help process HIV testing. So malaking hakbang ho yan kasi tayo mismo at dito mismo magagawa natin, magiging mas mabilis ho yung pagkuha natin ng ating resulta. Ngayon po, yung ating molecular laboratory is dedicated to COVID, but the first quarter of next year, we are looking at being able to already test HIV specimens. Isa lang ho yan sa mga hakbang natin towards the future. But before I talk about the future, gusto kong i-acknowledge yung trabaho na ginawa ng ating social hygiene team at ang CHO office in the past. Thank you for being so aggressive. Thank you na pagdating kahit sa telemedicine ho natin, incorporated ho yung mga consultations natin pagdating sa HIV and AIDS. Thank you for looking at all aspects para ang mga kababayan nating Taguigenyo ay nakakaramdam ng compassion. They know who to call, they know where to go. At makakaasa ho kayo that here in the Executive Department, we have a strong partner. Nandito ho kami not only to give a helping hand, but to give our all-out support. This is a priority of the City of Taguig, and we affirm this as a priority. We will continue to listen, we will continue to partner with our partners in the private sector and of course in the public health sector. Your advice is important, you're always heard, and it is important for us to listen to you. We get a lot of our input from our private partners at yung mga galing po natin na public health advisors. Again, thank you for power. We continue to pray and we continue to wish for solidarity ngayong World AIDS Day. And we will continue the fight together and we will continue it compassionately. Maraming salamat po.
Mahalaga po ang boses ng kabataan at ito ang isa sa mga paraan upang kayo ang aming maging instrumentong ng pagbabago at mabigyan ng pagkakataon na i-represent ang mga kapatid nating merong mga HIV infection. Isa sa proyekto ng programang ito ay maglaan ng isang speech competition sa pagitan ng grade 11 or grade 12 student mula sa pampubliko at mga pampribadong paaralan. Malugod naming ipinapakilala ang mga paaralang tumugon sa aming panawagan. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the participating schools, Learn and Explore Montessori School, Senator Rene Cayetano Science and Technology High School, Standalone Senior High School at Fort Bonifacio, Bagong Bayan National High School, Taguig National High School, Taguig Science High School, Tipas National High School, General Ricardo Papa Senior Memorial High School, Stand-Alone Senior High School within Taguig Integrated School, President Diosdado Macapagal High School, Signal Village National High School, Upper Bicutan National High School, Kapitan Eddie Reyes Integrated School. And here the mechanics of the speech competition.
Open to all private and public schools in Taguig City. One representative from each school composed of either grade 11 or grade 12 senior high student. Speech must be maximum of 3 minutes only. Last day of entry for registration is on November 24, 2020. Recorded speech videos, last day of submission is on November 27, 2020. Preliminaries will be aired and conducted on December 1, 2020. There will be voting for a netizen choice through number of likes in I Love Taguig and or Taguig Social Hygiene Clinic Facebook page. Finalists shall be announced on December 1, 2020. Participating schools shall be informed. Netizen choice shall be announced on the same day. The top 3 schools will be given topics to prepare and will go through the final stage on December 10, 2020. The top 3 finalists shall compete in Lakeshore Mercado del Lago, Lower Bicutan, Taguig City, Thursday, December 10, 2020, 9 in the morning. During the final stage, the 3 schools shall take turns in answering one question instantaneously. Judges scoring on the stage will be back from 0. Criteria for judging on preliminary round. Message: relevance and relation of speech in the demand of present difficult times, 40%. Presentation: structure, connection of ideas, deliverance, confidence, and conviction, spontaneity, 20%. Netizen impact: charisma and likability of speech, 40%, for a total of 100%. For the final round, message: relevance and relation of speech in the topic, 60%. Presentation: structure, connection of ideas, deliverance, confidence and conviction, spontaneity, 40%, for a total of 100%.
Ready na kayo? Ang topic ng speech competition na ito ay The Role of Youth in HIV/AIDS Awareness During Pandemic Crisis. Again, the role of youth in HIV/AIDS awareness during pandemic crisis. Simulan natin sa unang kalahok na si Miss Erina Sison ng Learn Explore Montessori School.
38 million, a seemingly large amount. But this isn't money we're talking about. This is the number of people living with HIV, 97,000 of which are Filipinos. This is the Human Immunodeficiency Virus that, when left untreated, becomes a life-threatening acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or commonly known as AIDS. For this reason, HIV/AIDS is still a major public health concern. Thankfully, HIV can now be prevented. Therefore, people living with it can live longer and normal lives. So, why is the stigma and discrimination still rampant? Over the past years, there is stigma and discrimination to people with HIV/AIDS, despite medical advancements and awareness campaigns. Many still say that they do not have the information or they're not aware what HIV/AIDS is all about. Because of the presence of the pandemic and community quarantines in place, outside movements of supporters and youth like us have been hindered in fulfilling our advocacy. The ignorance brought about by the pandemic has become a challenge in spreading awareness about the virus. Fortunately, the seamless accessibility to modern technologies has played a vital role in allowing the youth to share factual information about AIDS, making it an essential pedestal to promote and extend the youth advocacy across the online communities. To raise awareness, let us research and share. This red ribbon, for example, is the universal symbol of awareness and support for people living with HIV/AIDS. Simply knowing its significance and wearing it already shares a message of awareness. We have access to smartphones and modern media like Facebook and YouTube. Surely a few minutes spent in learning about the virus is not too much to ask. I still believe that the youth is the hope of the future. I still believe in us. Let us continue to educate and collaborate, search and research. Let us show our full and boundless support, join hand in hand in spreading awareness. Together, our small efforts and voices will have a huge impact. That somewhere in time, stigma and discrimination will no longer foster and exist. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Arena Season na representative ng Learn and Explore Montessori School. Dumako naman po tayo sa ating ikalawang kalahok na si Miss Ann Penelope Basco mula sa Senator Rene Cayetano Science and Technology High School.
Hello? Hello, this is from St. Peter's Hospital. May I talk to Miss Reyes? This is she. Miss Reyes, your test results came back and I regret to inform you that
I am positive. At this moment, imagine yourself being positive for HIV. In a highly conservative society, having HIV means that people will see you as someone disgusting, someone to avoid, someone who is unclean. But do we really need to adhere to this social stigma? I'm positive. This is what people hate to hear and are afraid of during the plight of COVID-19. It has taken a toll on the lives of the people. During this pandemic, the Department of Health reported that 197 people have died from January to March this year due to HIV. 22 of these were young people. With the coronavirus disease, the lives of those infected with HIV are at greater risk due to their weakened immune systems. I'm positive that awareness is the key to eradicate this virus. There is treatment but no cure. The lack of awareness has pushed society to shun those who have HIV. According to researchers from the Human Rights Watch, people with HIV are being unlawfully terminated at work. Because of this, they are likely to remain undiagnosed and to suffer in silence. I'm positive that there is hope. Advocating for HIV awareness, especially while the world is locked in isolation, is the most that the youth can do. In 2008, Timothy Ray Brown was the first patient to recover from HIV through antiretroviral therapy. This year, Adam Castillejo was also cured through a bone marrow transplant. In March, an HIV-positive Chinese patient contracted COVID-19, yet he recovered. With this, I have hope that someday the world will be free of HIV despite all odds. Nevertheless, the youth should work together with the government in spearheading proper education and information. Strive to be their ally, hear their untold stories, and amplify their voices. This is how we can make a difference. Let us, the youth, serve as the sun in these trying times, giving warmth and rays of hope. We must empower each other and abolish the stigma. This is my pledge for human rights and the dignity of those battling COVID-19 and HIV. I am positive.
And that is Ann Penelope Basco from Senator Rene Cayetano Science and Technology High School. Our third contestant is from Stand-Alone Senior High School, Fort Bonifacio, Mr. Michael L. Soria.
Given the fact that the world is facing a conundrum that we don't know when will end or will it ever end, there have been a lot of viruses such as HIV that brought people to an alarm that shook the people, its health system, and everything. What made it worse is the emergence of COVID-19 virus, as it brought people to the worst of their lives. Well, there's nothing we can do but unite with a global solidarity, doing our shared responsibility. Our battle against HIV and AIDS is never ending, and I hate it, and I know you guys too. It has killed a lot of people, destroyed lives and relationships, and what were worse is an isolation through inhumane discrimination. Well, I want this time and raise awareness and say they don't deserve it. They don't deserve such treatment. They are not disgusting people. And please, stop the stigma. That is not your role as a youth. Who cares? Who seek welfare to the oppressed people. Your role is to strengthen the awareness of HIV and AIDS. With that being said, the world needs unity and solidarity, please do your part. As all eyes pans and focuses on health, its system, and the like, this is the perfect time and opportunity to learn and take power to build strong foundation in our health system, making a more powerful and more resilient society, not only against COVID-19, but as well the tyranny brought by the threat of HIV. These taught me a lesson that hit me so hard, a lesson that showed me the worst overview of today's society. And I know we youths can do something extraordinary. And it starts right now, a start of a long-awaited epilogue of this problem. The stigma, the discrimination, it all ends right here. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Soria ng Stand-Alone Senior High School, Fort Bonifacio. Last contestant for our first set is Miss 𝙂𝙡𝙤𝙖𝙡 of Bagong Bayan National High School.
Philippines is no innocent in terms of having HIV and AIDS cases. Our beloved country is one of the lowest rates of infection but also one of the fastest growing number of cases worldwide. So I came up to a question: why? Why do HIV and AIDS cases keep on increasing? Is it because of low perception of risk, or is it because of low rates of testing? Some ignore the threat of HIV and most aren't willing to have themselves tested just because they're afraid of discrimination, frightened to be belittled. Well, I want to tell you that having HIV and AIDS has never been considered as crime. Having yourself tested is nothing to be ashamed of. You'll find out if you're infected or not, and if you do, you might feel uncomfortable, mad, sad, incompetent, and be ashamed of yourself at first. But hey, HIV will never be your fault. Reality is, people with HIV can still have happy relationships without passing the virus to their partners. But come to think of it, won't it be better to avoid HIV than to fight it when it is already in our systems? As youth, we can play a huge part in spreading awareness of HIV and AIDS across the globe by using our own voice, by using social media. Our generation is also called as the new media age, wherein technology is used to spread information and news, but is usually used to discriminate and hate people who haven't met the society's standard. Wake up, my fellow youth. We should use media, our voice, for better purposes. We can show our sympathy to those infected people instead of uploading some cruel posts about them. Upload awareness of HIV. Social media, our voice, should be used validly. December 1 happened to be the World AIDS Day, a day that gives chance for people to fight HIV. But what if we can have World AIDS Day every single day? Every day to stand against HIV and every day to support people who have HIV. Let us show those infected people that they are not alone, that we are aimed to be with them while they fight it until they win it. Posting a single reminder to prevent HIV or a motivation to those infected every day wouldn't lessen anyone's life expectancy. Educating people about the awareness of HIV through online seminars is also a great idea. Social media, our voice could speak better if we learn how to use it. Allow ourselves to prove that youth is really the hope of one's nation, that youth do have a voice that speaks for a greater agenda. Wake up, my fellow youth. The youth should be the hope of one's nation, and we, my co-youth, will be.
Sa pagkakataong ito, nais ko ipakilala sa inyo ang tatlo nating hurado. Our first judge is from our panel is a reputable HIV and mental health advocate, a project officer for behavioral research on male having sex with male, AIDS Society of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, our judge number 1 is Mr. June Oliveros. Okay, tumungo naman po tayo sa ating second set ng ating mga contestant. Our contestant number 5, ang ikalimang kalahok natin ay mula sa Taguig National High School. No other than Miss Justin Nicole S. Balatbat.
Elizabeth Taylor once said, "It's bad enough that people are dying of AIDS, but no one should die of ignorance." Indeed, I am Justin Nicole S. Balatbat, a humanities and social science student from Taguig National High School. I am young, but my age doesn't have to be a restriction to a stigma of ignorance. A large population of Gen Z shows a lack of knowledge surrounding HIV. The survey from Merck and Prevention Access Campaign showed that 41% of Gen Z people were not at all informed or only somewhat informed about HIV. This is alarming, especially if we take into account that over the past 5 years, young people aged 15 to 24 are becoming more prone to this virus. Just like what Jose Rizal had quoted, the youths are the hope of our country. The future is in the hands of this generation. But why is it that the minority of us aren't aware of this? Youths don't just voice out. We join the movement. We are part of the change and that we want to see in this world, that we deserve better. Prevention programs and school-based sex education are just examples of interventions to increase HIV-related knowledge and shape safer sexual behaviors to help prevent infections to this vulnerable group. If no one will educate us about this, the idea of proper sex education, which is completely normal, will only remain taboo. And it's ironic how this generation is deemed as far more open-minded and permissive, but our foreelders are mostly against it. It's time to change the norm and belief that being liberated is inappropriate, when in fact, this should be normalized among teenagers to give them a background regarding safe sex and at the same time, serve as a preventive measure against HIV and AIDS. All of us, of all ages and of all economic status, must be subjected to high-quality treatment and care. The HIV and AIDS epidemic will only get worse in the long run if we do not act now. We need widespread awareness and understanding of this, and it must start with the youth. Access to healthcare, including early detection as well as an increased awareness of preventive services, must be given by the government to its people. And the city government of Taguig has been committed to spreading HIV awareness through the Ready, Test, Go program. Somewhat, the focus should be on the marginalized sectors. We, the youths, deserve better. You, me, everyone. We work in solidarity. We share responsibility. The advocacy and awareness of HIV will create a better us, a better future, to which society neglects ignorance. I am young, but my age doesn't have to be a restriction to a stigma of ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Justin from Taguig National High School. And our sixth contestant is Mr. Jumar D. Pata from Taguig Science High School.
Today, I stand here right in front of you to inform you of a disease that should be wiped from the face of the earth. And that is the terrible disease, HIV. Human Immunodeficiency Virus is a sexually transmitted infection that attacks the immune system. The virus thrives in certain body fluids such as blood, semen, breast milk, vaginal and rectal fluids, and can be transmitted through unprotected sex, sharing of needles, breastfeeding, and mother-to-child transmission. Take note that the virus can't spread through skin contact, insects, saliva, sweat, tears, hugging, kissing, and sharing eating utensils. Symptoms of HIV include fever, fatigue, swollen lymph nodes, diarrhea, or even pneumonia. Now, AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, happens when someone has had HIV for many years and has a severely weakened immune system. Symptoms include Kaposi sarcoma, lymphoma, and pneumocystis pneumonia. In the Philippines, the latest estimated incidence of HIV and AIDS reported this January to September 2020 amounts to 5,627 cases. While we have one of the lowest infection rates in the world, we also are one of the fastest growing number of cases worldwide. From 2001 to 2009, the Philippines has had growth in number of cases of over 25%. The lingering question remains, how can we wipe this disease out? Thanks to modern medicine, we are slowly working on a cure. 𝙂𝙡𝙤𝙤 once stated in her advocacy against HIV, "I will use my voice in order to influence the youth and raise HIV awareness." With respect to her noble cause, we too, shall use our voice to spread awareness to each of our fellow youth and citizens. Prevention is the absolute best way to stop HIV from spreading even more, as prevention is better than cure. Get tested as soon as possible, take prescribed medications, have abstinence, and if someone you know has the disease, never discriminate. We humans need love and support, and their conditions doesn't make them any less different from us. So please, I encourage you to show affection for them, especially during these trying times of the pandemic. Heaven knows they need it. As I have my closing remarks, I would like to remind you that there is nothing wrong in having HIV. To those who are continuing to fight the battle with HIV, be it those who are infected or the ones who are developing the cure and spreading awareness, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude and sympathy for your hard work and for staying strong. We're all in this together. We can put an end to this. Spread awareness, not HIV.
Maraming salamat Mr. Jumar D. Pata of Taguig Science High School. Ang sumusunod na kalahok ay ang representative ng TIPAS National High School na si Mr. Clifford Tobotabo.
HIV. You most likely heard of it before, whether from school, TV, or even social media, or even from any person. But do you really understand the gravity of it? Let me explain. HIV is a nasty viral infection that is a global burden. It slowly attacks your body and your immune system. And the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS as we know, is the manifestation of the HIV in your body. There's really only one way that it is transmitted, and it is through bodily fluids. One example would be blood. But the most known cause would be intercourse. In 2019, there are 59 reported deaths, and among those with HIV, 95% of them were male. Let us not make this a silent pandemic. Let's use our voice to raise awareness to these problems. Did you know that as of right now, 35,278 people are living with HIV? They're going through antiretroviral treatment. It is a miracle that we've found this treatment at all, and that the people with HIV can still continue living with a long and more happier life. Through this, the government has been helping all of us. They use door-to-door counseling and even testing services to let us find out whether or not we have HIV, and if we do, they help us treat it with this right information. We have the power to raise awareness ourselves. We have social media. We can use social media as our weapon against HIV. Simply sharing or posting about knowledge and proper information about HIV is already helping the world. We make prevention easier, and not only that, we also give hope to those people with HIV. hope that can bring more people together to stand in solidarity and responsibility. We fight as one, and through that, we become triumphant. Like Princess Diana says, HIV doesn't make dangerous people. So give their hand a shake, and give them a hug, because heaven knows they need it.
Ang napakinggan niyo po ay si Mr. Clifford Tobatabo ng Tipas National High School. Our 8th contestant for this second set of participating school is from General Ricardo Papa Memorial High School, and she is Miss Rachel Ann Marie Cruz.
When the person is infected by Human Immunodeficiency Virus, his immune system weakens because the important cells that help the body fight infections are destroyed, which makes him invulnerable to other infectious diseases. When a person reaches the HIV's final stage, which is the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or what we call AIDS, he is at the high risk of accumulating infections that could cause serious illnesses that may lead to death. Now, let me ask you, are you willing to engage yourself in strengthening HIV or AIDS awareness and stop stigma and discrimination to create a positive social change? I wonder what life would be if there would be no judgments to be thrown to people with such circumstances. Well, life is indeed unfair. However, in humans' nature, the principle of distinction to a particular system of values concerning what is right and wrong is identified. Let me tell you one common scenario that unconsciously shows stigma. Your friend at work told you that a coworker should not participate on boodle fights because he is infected by the said virus. You knew that people can only get or transmit HIV is through specific body fluids such as blood, semen, preseminal fluids, rectal fluids, vaginal fluids, and breast milk from a person who is infected by HIV. As a supporter, and with the given situation, what will be your act against stigma? Of course, the best thing to do is to help your friend understand that refusing casual contact with someone who is infected by the virus is a form of stigma. Let us be aware that treating someone differently regarding on his illness might become a lifetime damage, as shame, fear of disclosure, isolation, mockery, inequity, moral judgment, and despair are some of what he would think and feel for himself, basing on the moral standard that the society had set up. As for those who recognize the sufferings of people living with HIV, I am hoping that you will hear my voice to be inspired and use my speech to help and educate people about it. I want you to know that the person who is infected is not the enemy, but the virus. We have our minds to make right decisions and mouth to give wise conclusions. In this time of pandemic, let us help each other. To the people who have said virus, you are not alone. We are here to help stop the discrimination and stigma, be more aware, and fight against HIV.
Again, Ms. Rachel Ann Marie Cruz of General Ricardo Papa Senior Memorial High School. Our second judge is the one of the most highly respected healthcare professional in HIV/AIDS program, Dr. 𝙂𝙡 Ocampo. Dr. Ocampo served as the Provincial Health Officer in Palawan. He is the present Country Director of Joint United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS, UNAIDS. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. 𝙂𝙡 Ocampo. Ipagpatuloy na natin ang kompetisyon sa ika-9 na kalahok mula sa stand-alone senior high school within Taguig Integrated School. Siya ay si Mr. Dexter Macastiib.
Good day, everyone. According to Ramana Permaho, There is no good or bad. Everything is just either a product of pure awareness or sheer ignorance. Being ignorant is a very scary word that we don't want to be seen and definitely don't want to be called one. Ignorance is not a synonymous word for stupid. It is not the inability to learn. It is the state you're in before you learn. When someone comes from a place of ignorance, an opportunity to learn is seen. There are still wrong notions about HIV and AIDS that somehow caused by the lack of knowledge. In other people, they still believe that HIV is a homosexual disease, which was proven wrong by the case of Ryan White in 1985. He was a 13-year-old hemophiliac who had contracted HIV through contaminated blood treatment. A lot of people still believe that HIV is a death sentence, which is actually not true. Well, some of you might question me. Where are the stories? Why we can't even hear their voices? Well, all of this can be answered by 3 words: fear, stigma, and shame. These keep them living in a closet, not vocal about their situation, and ashamed to be known who they really are. Because social scrutiny and ridicule are the things they will get for being in the out. And this needs an action. I stand here knowing that we, the youth of today, have a role to play to the society and the power to stop the fear, the stigma, and the shame. Our role is to raise awareness and educate how to mitigate humiliation on these people in this pandemic crisis. Pandemic should not be a factor to forget that there are still HIV cases and they are still discriminated. We must make everyone aware that no one should be left behind and oblivious to what reality is, to what HIV is. Awareness can be spread through social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and etc. We have to make our time productive that we can able to attend virtual events such as seminar, debate, and talk about HIV and AIDS prevention and awareness. Seek education when faced with ignorance. See the human through the disease. Always be mindful. Always be compassionate. Thank you very much.
Muli, si Mr. Dexter Makasiib ng Stand-Alone Senior High School within Taguig Integrated School. Presenting our 10 participants, Ms. Tashaina Bandong from President Estado Macapagal High School.
What is the real virus? Or should I say, who is the real virus? Since the day that HIV or AIDS had been recognized, we've advanced our ways in treating it medically. And it is now possible for people living with HIV to live a long and healthy life. But the problem is not the disease anymore. It is how we treat them and make them feel. We've made progress on how to treat the diagnosed, yet the public's perception remains the same just like a few decades ago. And this stigma and discrimination limit the way they live. It holds them back from living a healthy life, being themselves and free. So what can we do to break the stigma and discrimination? There are 4 ways we can do to end the HIV stigmatizing and discrimination. It is acceptance, avoiding ignorance, disseminate and support, or AIDS. First is A for acceptance. We do not know how to accept people who are living with HIV. We judge them immediately about their life choices, make assumptions and generalizations as if we know their life, just because they are diagnosed with the disease. This makes it hard as well for them to accept themselves and might also lead to internalized stigma. Acceptance allows them to seek help, get tested, have treatment, and engage in other prevention strategies without second thoughts on what other people might think. Second is I for the ignorance, which we should avoid. The lack of proper knowledge and awareness about HIV or AIDS, how it spreads, symptoms, and how to prevent it. Ignorance that has not been cleared up will result to fear and later on to stigma and discrimination. It is the reason not only for the spread of false beliefs and misconceptions, but as well as the HIV or AIDS itself. It is not something you can ignore if you think you are at high risk. Do research, seek help, ask for treatment, and don't wait any longer. We must raise awareness and educate the people around us on how to avoid ignorance. The third is D, to disseminate, raise, and spread awareness to everyone. Learn to apply the stigma language guide as words are powerful and can either empower or stigmatize people. We must be careful about what we say and how we say it. As a youth, you can be an advocate in disseminating awareness and breaking the stigma and discrimination in our society. And lastly is S. Support people who are living with HIV. Help them feel that they matter, welcome, and are supported by the community. Learn to stand up to the stigmatizing and discrimination that has been happening. A healthy environment enables the people diagnosed to have a healthy mental and emotional well-being that can combat their internalized stigma. The pandemic crisis has brought enough stress, fear, and anxiety to people. We can all say that we've experienced stigma and discrimination from people during this period. It is the time where we've isolated ourselves from others in fear of catching the disease as well as the others to us. And it is somewhat similar to HIV or AIDS and the way we treat those who were diagnosed. And what is the only difference? This pandemic is temporary. What we felt is temporary. But the people living with HIV will continue to live with the stigma and discrimination their whole life if we are not going to break it. This is for the resilient people living with HIV, to bring their hope, integrity, and value. As a youth, we need to take our part to spread awareness because it's our shared responsibility to achieve global solidarity. Hashtag Rock the Ribbon.
And that speech was from the President Diosdado Macapagal High School, Ms. Tashaina Bandong. Pakinggan naman natin ang representative ng Signal Village National High School. Siya ay walang iba kundi si Mr. Denver John Aquino.
Picture this. You are in the vicinity of your school and you see the severely ill, nearly paper thin teacher pass by. Then, you overheard students saying, "I bet he has HIV." I witnessed that exact scene before that favorite teacher of mine died. And what I was furious about was that ridicule was widespread throughout the school. Alive or dead, my teacher was a victim of stigma and discrimination. Later on, I found out that his cause of death is pneumonia, not HIV. The naysayers, though, keep on pointing the connection between pneumonia and HIV. They say he died of pneumonia because he was HIV positive. Well, at least they are right that HIV can lead to AIDS, which makes them more vulnerable to these complications. But they are wrong and stigmatizing his condition. At normal times, HIV discrimination already poses barriers to prevention, testing, and support. Some have been denied of employment, and worse, victims of violence and crimes. Today, their difficulties are worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of you might be thinking, why a 17-year-old is talking about HIV? I should only worry about my studies. Well, that is right. But sadly, data shows that almost half of new HIV cases in the Philippines are from my age group. And that makes it my business then. Now, I call upon my fellow youth to start educating ourselves and talk openly about it. Use our platform to spread awareness about the ABC of prevention. Abstinence, be faithful to one partner, and consistent use of protection. Do our role to stop these 3 F's: silence, stigma, and shame. Correct myths. For instance, no one is injecting fruits with HIV blood. Instead of saying, "That is the punishment for their sins," we must use encouraging words to help them live the rest of their lives positively. All of these together, we will make HIV history. I will end my speech with a challenge to my fellow youth. Will you, just like me, will take up the barrier for people living with HIV? Thank you.
Again, Mr. Denver Jan Aquino of Signal Village National High School. Meron ba tayong dalawang participant? Our 12th participant is Miss Emilu Delphine from Upper Bikutan National High School.
As part of today's youth, the happenings around us have been widening my perspectives even more, especially during this time of pandemic. It's like switching the aspects with various instruments. If I use a magnifying glass, I can see through the world's problems being continuously written on a piece of paper, merely stopping with a comma, but never ending with a period. And if I change it with a microscope, there we'll look deeper and see two of the most viral problems around the globe. The COVID-19, and there, HIV. From that moment, I started asking myself, when will these circle-shaped viruses turn into dots? We can do many things such as binge watching and doing TikTok dances since #StayHomeChallenge started. We're too occupied of ways to entertain us in this new normal setup as we engage ourselves in various things as coping mechanism. Time seems to slow down as we stay at home to prevent the spread of the virus. However, this doesn't make the societal issues decelerate. How about my society? How about my fellow Filipinos experiencing grave societal issues set aside due to pandemic? I recall this emotional episode from an Eat Bulaga segment called Bawal Judgmental, and I quote, HIV is not a disability. Yes, it can kill our immunity, but never our humanity. Kael, who is an HIV positive, uttered these statements with tears in his eyes, but with a voice full of hope. As youth, we should learn to empathize and accept people living with HIV and AIDS, especially during this pandemic crisis. On the top of that, the record shows that 10-year-olds to 19-year-olds are part of this increasing percentage of HIV cases. The fact that these new cases are coming from our age group is quite alarming, and this makes me feel disheartened. But, together, we can lessen this number by spreading awareness. As stated in the article in Medical News today, a person can only be infected with the virus if he or she comes in contact with bodily fluids from a person who already has HIV. On the contrary, HIV isn't transmitted through saliva and sharing of utensils. And most importantly, HIV is not a disease limited to LGBTQ+ community. It is not a disease of the flirtatious. Let me ask you this question once again. When will these circular-shaped viruses turn into dots? The answer? TikTok. Yes, you heard it right. TikTok as in think and talk. Together, let's think of ways on how to break the stigma about this underemphasized social issue. Together, let's talk on how to put an end to these myths and misconceptions about HIV and AIDS. By doing this, we will meet and reach that end instead of just running around in circles. This is not only #StayHomeChallenge, but also #ThinkTalkChallenge. If we can make trending TikTok videos, why not trend facts about HIV and AIDS awareness?
And that is the representative from Upper Bikutan National High School, Miss Emilu Delphine. Nahirapan na ba kayo sa ating top 3 choices? Our final contestant for this speech competition is Miss Maggie Pasha from Kapitan Eddie Reyes Integrated School.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am truly honored and humbled to represent Kapitan Eddie Reyes Integrated School in this special event, the World AIDS Day. We commemorate to the millions of people who have lost their life and those who are still battling against HIV or AIDS. HIV, or the Human Immunodeficiency Virus, a virus that evokes fear and disquietude. The person who has an HIV becomes the carrier and can infect others through body fluid transmission. Without proper medical intervention, HIV can destroy our immune system, which may lead to the dreaded disease called AIDS. Recently, we have turned the tide on HIV. The death sentence has become more manageable, and most importantly, ignorance has been cured. As a youth, it was true that I didn't know anything about it. I had the wrong impressions of it. Yet, through knowledge and empathy, I learned that with modern treatments and management, HIV is no longer an end of the road. Sadly, misconceptions still linger. The social pandemic is closely linked to the LGBT people or LGBT community, as they were seen to be the responsible of HIV transmission. Despite of having modern intervention. LGBT people is the most vulnerable to discrimination and irrational hatred. The dire situation does not stop there. My friend who was on HIV almost gave up on living. Despair, anguish, and pain sum up the AIDS in our society, the impact of AIDS in our society. But there is a hope. As a youth, I represent 1,000 of voices. I represent 1,000 of words. I represent 1,000 of hands seeking for an action. I may not have the money and the luxury, but I am confident that I can represent the 1,000 of voices of the living and the fallen for the betterment of our society. We are in the middle of pandemic. We can spread news about HIV and AIDS. We can contribute by voicing out our opinions and learning regards with the situation of our nation. As a youth, we can be the beacon of hope for thousands of people. Together, we can make a change. When we come together, our communities are heard.
There you have it, our last contestant, Miss Maggie Pasha from Kapitan Eddie Reyes Integrated School. Our last judge is the Senior Project Officer and the Program Manager for Filipina Shell Foundation Incorporated, Philippine Business Sector Response to HIV Program. She is one of our best allies whenever we have activities. Ladies and gentlemen, our judge number 3, Dr. Maria Estela Flores. Habang kinukompute natin ang scores ng participants, ipapalabas namin ang isa sa pinagmamalaking programa ng Taguig Social Hygiene Clinic and Drop-In Center. Ang kauna-unahang innovated door-to-door HIV screening, the most convenient way of delivering HIV screening service right at your doorstep. Free and confidential. Sit back and relax. Here's the Ready, Test, Go!
Isa sa nakakaalarmang issue na hinaharap ngayon ay ang HIV o Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Ito ay isang uri ng virus kung saan inaatake ang immune system, dahilan upang humina ang katawan ng isang tao at di na makalaban sa iba't ibang impeksyon. Kapag hindi naagapan, ang virus na ito ay nagdudulot ng AIDS o Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, ang pinakamalalang stage ng HIV infection na nakamamatay. Upang paigtingin ang programa ng Taguig sa HIV testing, inilulunsad ang bagong programa na Ready, Test, Go. Ito ay handog sa mamamayan ng Taguig na natatakot o nahihiyang pumunta sa clinic. Layunin nito na makapaghatid ng libre at confidential na door-to-door HIV counseling at screening. Paano malalaman ang iyong status sa HIV? Negatibo ba o positibo? Sa mga gustong magpa-HIV screening, maaari kayong magpa-schedule sa 0915-953-1389 o sa pamamagitan ng private message sa www.facebook.com/taguigsocialhygiene. Ibigay lang ang buong pangalan ng kliyente, ang edad nito, eksaktong address at landmark, at ang araw at oras na pwede silang puntahan. Paalalahanan ng mga HIV counselor ang kliyente sa text o PM isang araw bago ang nakatakdang araw ng konsultasyon. Darating ang HIV counselor sa sinabing lokasyon na nakadamit sibilyan. Pagdating niya sa lugar, kukontakin niya ang kliyente. Sa kanilang pagtatagpo, magpapakilala ang HIV counselor at ipapakita ang ID. Kailangang kumpirmahin ng HIV counselor ang pagkakakilanlan ng kliyente. Hihingian ng ID ang kliyente bilang kumpirmasyon. Ang HIV counselor ay magsasagawa ng pre-screening counseling patungkol sa HIV. Kung naiintindihan at sumasang-ayon ang kliyente sa HIV screening, kailangan nitong mag-sign sa written informed consent. Kung tumanggi ang kliyente, hihingian naman ito ng dahilan ng kanyang pagtanggi. Bilang ito ay confidential, gagamit ng UIC o Unique Identifier Code ang HIV counselor sa paglalagay ng label. Bibigyan ang mga kliyente ng post-screening counseling. Kung non-reactive ang kliyente, siya ay bibigyan ng pamphlets tungkol sa HIV, condom, at lubricants.
Kung reactive ang kliyente, agaran na ire-refer sa social hygiene clinic para sa HIV testing. Ang maagang pagkatuklas at pagbibigay ng tamang lunas sa sakit na HIV ay makakabuti sa kalusugan, makakapagpahaba sa buhay at magpapababa ng tsansa na kumalat ang sakit na ito sa ibang tao. Nirerekomenda ng DOH na ang lahat na may edad 13 hanggang 64 ay dapat magpa-HIV test kahit isang beses bilang pangangalaga sa kalusugan ng mga ito. Ang mga taong high risk sa ganitong karamdaman ay dapat magpa-test naman isang beses sa isang taon. Ang pagpapatest sa HIV ay makapagbibigay sa iyo ng importanteng impormasyon at makakatulong na mapanatiling ligtas ka at ang iba pa. Importante na malaman mo ang iyong HIV status, magiging payapa ang iyong kaisipan, at matutulungan kang gumawa ng mga tamang desisyon upang makaiwas ka sa pagkakaroon ng HIV o sa paghawa ng HIV sa ibang tao.
Kalusugan ay bigyang pansin. Alamin na ang iyong status.
Libre, mabilis, at confidential na HIV testing. Ready? Test, go!
At dumako naman po tayo sa ating special award. At ang nanalo para sa Netizens Choice Award, garnering 3,000 likes as vote. Congratulations, Miss Emily Delphine of Upper Bicutan National High School. Sa pagkakataong ito, pakinggan po natin ang ating mga respetadong personalidad sa HIV/AIDS program. Muli po, Mr. June Olivares ng AIDS Society of the Philippines, Dr. Louis R. Ocampo ng UNAIDS, and of course, Dr. Maria Estela G. Flores ng Pilipinas Shell Foundation.
Every first day of December each year, all nations join together in commemorating World AIDS Day to show support to people living with HIV and those that are affected by the virus, especially our brothers and sisters who lost their lives to AIDS since the beginning. The Philippines is one with the world in this special day, not only in bannering this year's theme of global solidarity, shared responsibility, but also in committing that UNAIDS Philippines will continue to champion across all sectors, government, non-government, and even in the private sector, the best interests of the people affected by HIV in the country. We all know that 2020 has been a particularly challenging year for almost everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented number of disruptions in everything that we do. However, it is very clear one of the most affected is the sector of public health, particularly in the delivery of health and social services to the people who need it. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Philippines has remained one of the countries in the world with the fastest rate of increase in the number of newly diagnosed cases. While this may mean that people's access to HIV services has been increasing throughout the years, more efforts need to be exerted in order for the country to accelerate its response further and overtake the epidemic. In the Philippines, data shows that young people aged 15 to 24 have been increasingly affected by the HIV epidemic throughout the years. And while barriers to accessing HIV services among adults and the older age groups have long been existing, such barriers are even bigger and wider for minors and young people. Access to HIV counseling and testing for people aged 15 and above without the need for parental consent has been covered by the passage of the new HIV law 2 years ago. While this is a great feat for the HIV advocacy and response in the country, attitudes and behaviors of young people about accessing such services is a completely different thing. More efforts are needed in making sure that HIV information, including HIV testing, treatment, and human rights-related information are effectively delivered to them, even if it takes using the channels they access, the language that they speak, and the interests that spark them. Because of the community lockdowns, people aged below 18 were not allowed to leave their homes for almost half a year since it started in March. Affected Yankee populations were forced to stay home without any access to HIV and related services. In addition, people living with HIV were left worried at home about the continuity of their antiretroviral treatments during the strict community lockdowns where mobility is among the biggest challenge. However, that situation has resulted into the government, CSOs, and private sectors to work together in ensuring that HIV services, from access to information, testing and treatment, and redress mechanisms for human rights violations are continued despite the COVID-19 crisis. UNAIDS Philippines is a witness of such local solidarity that contributed to the best interests of the people who are affected both by the HIV epidemic and by the challenges that COVID-19 has forced into us. The 1990 accomplishment of the country is far from ideal, but efforts towards achieving them remain steadfast even down to the last quarter of the year. Many local governments, CSO partners, and private sectors adopted this target as a shared responsibility not only for the country but for the world. This shared responsibility is a seed of hope that even if the country may not be able to achieve the 1990 targets by the end of this year, the country's efforts against HIV with its expanded network of partners would have a bigger commitment to ending the HIV epidemic by 2030. But to do this, we must put people first to get the AIDS response back on track. We must end the social injustices that put people at risk of contracting HIV, and we must fight for the right to health. There is no excuse for governments to not invest fully for universal access to health. World AIDS Day calls not only for solidarity and shared responsibility in the HIV response, but in making sure that very same people who champion against stigma and discrimination in HIV and AIDS be catalysts of the efforts to ensure that such stigma and discrimination on COVID-19 does not create bigger barriers that need to be destroyed in order for services to be accessed by those who need it. On behalf of the Joint United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS in the Philippines, I thank you for joining the rest of the world in celebrating solidarity and shared responsibility against HIV and AIDS and the COVID-19 pandemic in this year's World AIDS Day. You have our commitment to ensure that the great effort that we all do in the Philippines will contribute to beating the AIDS epidemic in the world, which will guarantee the right to health for all. Maraming salamat.
World AIDS Day held every first day of December each year. This is an opportunity for us to fight against HIV and AIDS. This is an opportunity for us to show our support and solidarity for people living with HIV and to commemorate those who have died with HIV. Today, as we celebrate World AIDS Day, wearing a red ribbon is a simple and powerful way to challenge the stigma and discrimination attached to HIV and AIDS. I commend all the young people of Taguig City for raising their voice in participating the fight against stigma and discrimination against HIV and AIDS.
Lahat po ng kalahok sa speech competition na ito ay makakatanggap ng Certificate of Participation. This Certificate of Participation is given to name of participant who actively participated in the World AIDS Day 2020. Global Solidarity, Shared Responsibility, Speech Competition, December 1, 2020. Isa ang mananalo ng Netizens Choice Award at siya ay mag-uuwi ng 1,000 pesos at isang gadget na tablet upang makatulong sa kanyang online class. 3 schools ang makakapasok sa finals na gaganapin sa December 10, 2020 sa Mercado del Lago, Lower Bicutan, Taguig City. Ang third place po ay makatanggap ng 2,000 pesos plus tablet. Second place is 3,000 pesos plus tablet. At ang first place ay mag-uwi ng 5,000 pesos plus tablet. Ito po ang pinakaabangang resulta mula sa score sheets ng ating panel of judges. In no particular order, here are the schools who will go through the finals on December 10, 2020 at the Mercado del Lago. I repeat, in no particular order. The first is Miss Ann Penelope Pasco from Senator Rene Cayetano Science High School. And our second is Miss Emilu Delphine from Upper Bicutan National High School. And the third is Mr. Denver John M. Aquino of Signal Village National High School. Congratulations, students and coaches! See you on finals on December 10, 2020. Nais ko pong tawagin ang ating medical coordinator ng HIV/AIDS program para sa panapos na pananalita. Mga kaibigan, Doktora Diwata Ariola.
Lubos po kaming nagpapasalamat sa lahat ng inyong mga suporta sa selebrasyon ng World AIDS Day 2020 na may tema na Global Solidarity, Shared Responsibility sa aming Mayor Lino Cayetano, Congressman Alan Peter Cayetano, Congresswoman Lani Cayetano, Senator Pia, Vice Mayor Ading, at sa Sangguniang Panglungsod. Sa Department of Education, Chief EPS, School Governance and Operations Division na si Dr. George Tison at ang OIC Schools Division Superintendent na si Mr. Margarito B. Materum sa pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon sa mga kabataan. Sa mga finalists, ang aking malugod na pagbati at sa lahat ng mga nakilahok ngayong taon, ang aming pasasalamat sa inyong lahat. Ako po ang Medical Coordinator ng Taguig Social Hygiene Clinic and Drop-In Center na si Dr. Diwata Ariola, ang buong pusong naglilingkod sa syudad ng Taguig. Maraming salamat.